university team. And the title of our presentation and our project that we worked on for the entire spring semester was Building Adaptive Capacity in North Jackson, Mississippi. At the start of this project, we really thought we were going to go in and we were going to create an adaptation plan for the flooding that goes on below the Barnard Reservoir. When we got there and talking to people, attending the cleanup, going house to house, we discovered that there was an underlying issue of the lack of community cohesion and communication. And so a lot of the times it seemed like many people knew about the issues, many people knew about the One Lake Plan and the Barnard Reservoir flooding, but there wasn't necessarily that next step of talking and talking to the right people and knowing when the meetings were happening to have everyone in the community's voice heard. So we had those talks, and from there we came up with the idea of a communications plan. Essentially, we wanted to create a framework to build that community connection between the 3 Brookwood communities and make it feel as if it was one unified Brookwood division, to give that sense of community, but also empower the people to go out and make their voices heard, fix these issues. And even though we were coming in as a Columbia University entity, we really wanted to work with the community. So we had a lot of conversations over Zoom. As y'all may know, the task force that was put together by Ramona and Tracy really helped get this off the ground. So that definitely was the thing that brought us together and made us realize what were the holes in place, what were the bridges in communication that needed to be fixed in order to solve the flooding issues and other issues that the Jackson area faces. So we can start going down the Brookwood Communication Plan. First, thank you again for joining us and working with us through all the technical difficulties. We really appreciate it. And the first part of this communication plan is the letter of intent, which outlines who we are, our purpose, and the help that we received from community members throughout the entire process. And I can't stress enough that this communication plan would not be possible without the trip that we took down to Jackson, Mississippi. You know, we had those conversations, over lunch, dinner, a lot of good Southern food. Is definitely a great time to make those connections and to hear what was actually working, because despite all the research we did over Google and reading the newspapers and learning about the Jackson community online, the important step was talking to people face to face, hearing Ramona and Tracy talking about the Nextdoor app and how important that is, attending the cleanup meeting and hearing from community leaders that organize these events already. So now we can jump into the communications plan more in detail, and I'll let Vanessa take the leap on this. Vanessa was the person who put this beautiful communications plan together. She is our design guru on the team and made this easily accessible. So Vanessa, take it away.
Great, thank you, Annie. Yes, so in order to help plan community action and create the communication plan that would be for the community, we created a framework, laid out a framework, which may seem very broad and very step-by-step, but just so you guys know, it is also for you to change and adapt and touch to the community. So first, in the step, we have identifying community. Annie, can you hit the next slide? Great. So the main thing, to start off is to identify the community, what neighborhoods are going to be a part, of the coalition, which helps to clearly identify and have somewhere written individual organized information about who will be leading or coming together and from what groups, which is crucial to then spreading information and getting resident. After this first step, then we go into identifying the issue. So this would be a broad issue that can later be broken out into subsections. And this will also make it easier for the steps taken to be focused on a certain topic, and that way all the energy and ideas. Next up, the third plan. The third step is using a strong communication network, which, like Annie said, would help to spread information, knowledge, emergency messages, and overall have good communication. Afterwards, after having a strong communication plan and a large group come together, a listening session would allow for the congregation of residents who are interested in participating to voice their opinions, their ideas, their plans. And this way could be an exchange of information, and which can then be brought to the next step as an action. And this would be the step-by-step action planning that would either go into solution.
Hold on a minute, we're losing the sound. The sound. Hold on one moment, please, Vanessa. Oh. We lost the sound. Huh? Vanessa, can you say something?
It's working.
Is it Vanessa's audio or is it all audio coming from this side?
I'm really not for sure.
Can you hear Annie?
Testing,
The
testing.
microphone went out.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you can continue now, Vanessa.
Okay, is this good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, so step 5 of the framework is action planning, which will include brainstorming the courses of action, setting clear and attainable solutions with plans and dates and set plan, and dividing these tasks into smaller work. So while the 5-step framework is multi-purpose tool that could help in the formation of this coalition, as a strategy to approach issues, we focus mainly on the communication portion, which was step 3. Yeah, so we're going to do a close-up, which is where we focus most of our energy, because we believe that the key first step that to lay a foundation for community coalition is communication and spread of information. So like Annie said, the communication network is a key component of community resilience, because it creates space for the community members to have understanding of the current and project their environmental hazards, their issues, and then take action. So in this step 3, we lay out a few simple steps that can be useful when establishing communication network. And we have compiled some resources that explain the best communication practices, how-to guides, and templates that can be adapted for various. So
Hold on a minute,
Sure.
babe.
we can go back. And once again, it is important to recognize that the communication methods being used can be improved and expanded. Yes, so next up we have just an example of how
Vanessa, I think there might be an audio issue on their end. I heard some voices. Ramona, is their audio still good?
We're gonna fix it right now. Hold on. Okay, you can go. You can start, Vanessa.
Okay, so with our close up on step 3, this will allow for the increased knowledge, trust, feeling of community, and this way also enable participants to cultivate the confidence and hope to take part in generating solutions. So this is definitely not just about communicating, but about building community trust and confidence in order to, generate solutions. It is important to recognize that the communication methods and everything that we have included is meant to be tailored to the community and also be improved and expanded as many times. Okay, so as we go into what the communication plan is going to do, it is important to have a clear understanding of who the audience is and what are the best. So here we have an example use pathway with an example issue being flooding. So basically we just laid out a very simple step 1, identifying the community, just like listing down different names from each group for each neighborhood, then the issue. And then here on number 3, we identified what communication platforms are currently being used, which could then help the community analyze if they're useful, and if so, or if not, then what can be used to help them. And then drafting a message, we also included an example message, as a way to initially reach out, and then 4 and 5, which is and then action. So that's a bit of an overview. Once again, we focused on step 3, which was the communication.
Thank you, Vanessa, for outlining the framework that we use to create this communications plan. Now, before I dive into what you will find in each section of the plan, I would just like to reiterate what Vanessa said. This is meant to be a communications plan that is adaptable and editable, so you can change the plan to fit the issue at hand best. And another thing we want to recognize is that each of the community members in the room right now knows the best practices of communication a lot more than we do. However, this is meant to be a tool to use those communications platforms that you already use, whether that be the Nextdoor app, Facebook, text message, and tailor it to create a communications and community building plan. So if you know about the issue of flooding or the trash pickup issues in Jackson, Mississippi, we wanted to create this communications plan to facilitate the easy use of the communications platforms that you already use and know about. So something we want to say is a lot of these communication strategies that we include in the plan are things that you already know about. But this is meant to show people how to use those platforms in a way to engage with community members, create that cohesion. So what you will find in each of the sections is a description of the communication channel, how it is currently used in Brookwood, how the channel can be used and what for, a set of best practices, a how-to guide to help you set up and use those channels. And we really went into detail because there are plenty of people, including myself, that had never used Nextdoor before. And so we want it to be a thing where you can pick up our communications plan, flip to the Nextdoor app section, and be able to host an event, put out a post to describe an issue, get volunteers, or have people attend an event, all using the app and the communications plan as a way to help set up those events and help set up those communication channels. We've also created an editable template of a post adapted to the specific design of the channel. So just to facilitate that easy use, everyone is very busy, right? So we wanted to make this as easy as possible to use this plan. And if you're ever unsure of what to use, we included the summary of all the channels and advice on the best usage, which you will find right at the beginning of the plan in a nice little gridded format. So we can turn to the specific forms of media that we detailed. One that's very popular and that I'm sure most people in the room have used before is Facebook. And so as most people know, it's a social media network used for two-way communication, but there's also lots of underused strategies, for example, creating groups around any topic, whether that is a specific issue at hand, for example, the flooding in Jackson, or having smaller groups for specific subdivisions, like creating one for the Brookwood subdivision. Currently, it's only being used by McLeod and Canton Club. So what can be done is creating a public Brookwood group to create that cohesion. And we've also included some best practices and how-to guides in there. Vanessa, if you would like to talk over this one.
Yes, so we also have Instagram, which many of us might use. But yeah, this is a photo-based app. Also, by Facebook. Everything okay? Okay, so the current use, we are not sure how the communities are using it, but it could definitely be a great way to spread information through flyers, photos, events, just like Facebook, but to reach more people. And we also included a how-to guide and creating a post and everything in that preparation. And yeah, and then we included a template that can make that straight.
So next up, we included descriptions over the Nextdoor app. This is something that we discovered after talking to people in the neighborhood, that this is something that is well used already by the McLeod and the Parkway Neighborhood Association. So news from all over Jackson can cause information overload, but the Nextdoor app allows specific communities to divide up and be able to share information that they think that their neighbors would find helpful. There's information about cleanups and other events being shared on this platform. And it uses zip codes to identify neighborhoods. So this makes it easy to connect to the people most local to you. One thing that we thought could be done that is not currently in the works is create a public Brookwood subdivision group. And this can be used as an outreach tool. This was one of the pictures up here is of our team when we went to the cleanup hosted by the community. And we actually later found out that the event and everything was started on Nextdoor app and shared on the Nextdoor app. So that's something that we definitely learned and could be used to explore issues like flooding and the other issues faced by the Jackson community. We included templates for events and spreading awareness over an issue. And we included information as well about emails, the best practices, using a community email account being one of the things that we highlight the most in the communications plan, just to have a very easy email list to use e-blast sites such as MailChimp. And we outline all of this in the plan. So if any of these words don't quite make a lot of sense to you, it's all outlined in the plan. As well as the newsletters. And here are the templates. And finally, QR codes. We won't go too much in detail here because I think once we roll through the communications plan itself, it will be very helpful. We included information about the flyers, the QR codes, more templates, finally radio, text, polls, surveys, and forms. And this is the part that I think Vanessa and I will spend a lot more time on, go a little bit more in depth because our team was a part of a very small portion of the issue here in Jackson and coming up with the solutions. We were an outside team, lucky enough to work with the community members in Jackson. Unfortunately, our time was limited to a semester because we were students and we have now graduated. Luckily, Professor Radley has talked to Ramona, has talked to Mike, so this project will continue on. It just won't be our specific team doing the work. And I know C2P2 with Mike Burns is dedicated to helping the flooding issues in Jackson. So the work will continue. The thing that we wanted to highlight is that this communications plan is only a tool. It is only something that we created to make your work easier. But we recognize that this meeting here that Ramona and Tracy have organized for everyone is the first step in many steps on the way to understanding the One Lake plan, understanding the flooding issues, and being able to solve those issues for the community members in Jackson. So I know something that we've thought about for the next steps of the Brookwood community is building that community cohesion through communication and collaboration, something that we hope the communications plan will help. Another thing is establishing strategies to address the current problems. As I understand, the meeting today is trying to get that done by having those conversations with people who face similar issues in the community itself. And the next one was establishing a committee or leadership team that will ensure the implementation and the continued use of this plan and building this community cohesion. So with that, Vanessa, do you have anything else to add before I flip through the plan itself?
Yes, I guess we're just happy to be a part and to be able to provide this for you guys. And I don't know about Annie, but this is all very exciting to see that you guys came up, like, showed up, and see that everyone is here. And we really hope that this allows for the creation of the foundation and get people going, get people excited, and have people be involved in all of these new tools that maybe like the MailChimp, being able to send a mass email, like that's such a useful thing and that I didn't really know about. So just like learning about these things could definitely bring people together and get people excited. So yeah, very excited for everyone. And yeah, thank you for letting us speak.
Yes, thank you so much. Here's some pictures of our wonderful trip to Jackson, Mississippi, where everyone greeted us with open arms. So thank you again for that. And without further ado, I will go over to the communications plan itself, just so y'all can see what the finished product looked like. Again, Vanessa was the person who made this all beautiful, so we can never be, we will always be grateful to her. But here is the Brookwood communication plan, and I will leave it to Ramona. I believe you're you're next in line to speak. But yeah, thank you so much for allowing us to come here and speak on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dr. Hadley. This has been such a wonderful experience. Having the opportunity to work with the students and work with you, Michael, as always, and Dr. Hadley, to work with you especially, and we are so looking forward to the next cohort of students who will help us carry this mission forward, implementing the communication plan. We are going to be partnering with Georgia State University for our cohort of students to help to develop a website for the community. So there's a lot that we are looking at to move forward. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. This is about what the community wants. And I would just like for the folks who have been involved in this process from the community to please stand up, raise your hand, let everybody know that how committed and dedicated Deion Thompson, the Pews, Mr. Pew, everybody. It was just really incredible, the commitment that neighbors put together. The neighborhood association, and I think that there is some something that we need to get clarity on, and that is the name. Because what we did was we looked at the subdivision, the area, and that's where we learned that there are 3 different neighborhoods within this broader area. And I can't remember, Annie, how the students, how we determined that the name was the Brookwood subdivision. Do you remember?
So that was through the tax information. It was like on the bills that people receive. I'm pretty sure Deion Thompson of Canton Club told that to us, but it may have been someone else. It was someone that we met during our trip to Jackson. But yes, it's on the bill information that people receive through the county.
Okay, because I know there was some question about the name.
Census groups.
Yes, ma'am.
When we were talking about the name, there is a Brookwood Country Club and subdivision in South Jackson. And that's why there's a big confusion with people not knowing, not associating it either. Because there's another one by that name in South Jackson.
Okay, so that's what we need to be clear. What is the name of the subdivision? Now, we look at the parents did go on the website, and it looks like the way that the tax assessors often is that each neighborhood is, they've got it like identified as a subdivision. So we need to work to find out what is it.
Mr. Rowan, it's my understanding that when they initially planted
entire area, it started out as Brookwood. And then over the years, as the various subdivisions were established, then it got the different names that we now have. But initially, the entire area, the plat from, I think, the bridge there on Old Canton North, and as you turn on Westbrook Road into into the McLeod neighborhood in particular, that area was considered as Brookwood. And then over the years, it got the individual names that we now have.
Okay, what should I do with this? So as those iterations took place, it doesn't look like they made. How do I do that? Okay,
It doesn't look,
So they can hear you.
okay, it,
You gotta have both of them.
it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't look like they changed it in the tax assessor's office, the original. And then we contacted the planning department. And that's a whole nother story. We'll have to save that discussion for another meeting.
Is that the same as mapping?
We do mapping, yes. In fact, we have my, Juan is gonna talk a little bit about how we came up with the maps and everything that we'll be creating. So what I would like to know if community is interested in adopting this plan as the guide and the tool for building cohesion between the 3 different neighborhoods, with those neighborhoods maintaining their own autonomy. Because the neighborhoods are autonomous, but we're all experiencing the same problem and the same issue. And the major issue is the flooding issue. And how can we use this opportunity in order to come together, to maybe move some barriers out of the way, come up with a unified vision for the community, for the area, because you have a wonderful community over here. It has so much potential. You know, I live off of 220 off of Clinton Boulevard, and we just don't have half of the resources that and the amenities that you have in your community. And you're just really blessed. And there's going to be a major issue that is at hand, and that is the One Lake Plan. What impact is that One Lake Plan as it stands today going to have on this community, but not only on this community? How is it going to impact other communities in the city of Jackson, like in West Jackson, that is not as privileged and have the amenities as your community has? So we want to look at some asset mapping. How do we map the assets in the community? How do you evaluate the value of your community? And then what do you need to do, and what do the community need to do in order to increase those values? Are you seeing an influx of or a reduction in home ownership? Are you seeing an influx of renters in the community? And what type of landlord? Are they good neighbors? Are they absentee landlords? Who are they? Right? And how do we hold them accountable so that they will be good neighbors? So that's the kind of work that we do, working with community, and then putting pressure where pressure needs to be on our elected officials. Are they adequately representing our communities? Are they making decisions at City Hall that's in the best interest of our communities and our quality of life? Like the garbage situation, right? That was just enough for me to just push me over the edge. So that's what I'm hoping that we will be able to work together. I have 30 years experience at this work. I love what I do. I love living in our cities and in our communities, but I know that we have issues. Crime is an issue. And another communications platform that we didn't talk about in our planning was the Ring system. And I noticed that Ring is becoming more and more, people are really using Ring a lot. So I guess I've got Ring and I get notices all the time. So that may be something else, another platform that we would like to add to the communications piece plan. So I do hope that that this is just the beginning of more meetings. I know that the neighborhood associations have their regular meetings on a monthly basis. And so, but as an assembly, a community assembly, can we just come to a decision that we will all come together, all three of the neighborhoods will come together, and then we will work through this neighborhood plan, this communications plan, and make it a driving tool, bring more people to the table. We need the business community to be represented. We need the faith-based community to be represented, interfaith. You know, I know there's a Jewish synagogue in the community. We would like to see all folks who have a vested interest in this area, in this neighborhood. And then we would look at resources. What type of resources can we bring to bear in order to help to carry out the vision that the community comes up with and that they devise? The next thing, I know we're way off schedule, and I do apologize for that. But that's what happens sometime when we deal with technology. But I would like to, because there was a meeting, I think last month, the month before last, where the Army Corps of Engineers gave very short notice for a so-called public hearing that they were having. So I have it as, we asked, and Abby Bromwich, who is with Pearl River Keepers, she's been a part of this whole process from the beginning. And also Juan, is Juan still here? Juan. So I'm going to turn it over to Juan and also to Abby to come and talk about the One Lake Plan.
Ramona.
The One Lake Plan.
Ramona.
Yes, sir. Are you familiar with the One Lake Plan?
Ramona. Oh, I'm sorry.
My students and you all, if you all want to go off, then that's fine. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
All right. Would you be able to hit that? That's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Ramona,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to present. The students are now graduates and they are busy trying to move on to their next assignments. If no one had any questions, they're more than welcome to stay, but if it's okay for them to leave, I wanted to know if that was okay.
Oh, absolutely. Does anyone have any questions for the students? I know. Michael.
I think 1, 2, 3, 4. For the back, for the seat, and for the horns.
Mr. Ramon. I'm gonna record the
I think he's recording it, so that's, yeah.
I think left. Because he's broadcasting on this.
Hey, everyone. Gonna wait. So the good news is I shouldn't cut out since I'm here live, but we'll see. This presentation is going to be a summary of a public comment that I submitted on behalf of a nonprofit called Healthy Gulf. It's a nonprofit that does environmental work with fresh water throughout the Gulf South. The Pearl River is, I believe, I can't remember the exact number, but it's one of the top freshwater providers in the Gulf of Mexico, outside of course of the Mississippi River. But that organization's been working against the One Lake Project for a while. They've been for a long time concerned with communities south of us, communities that have lived by the river for years that are facing all sorts of river deterioration issues. But in the last few months, the organization's taken a stronger interest in realizing, hey, communities in Jackson are woefully unaware of a lot of the project's details. Unfortunately, I have to, speed run through a lot of the information about what the project is. I did have this great opportunity a little bit over a month ago to meet with several folks from North Canton. Dion was there, and I don't think anyone else here was there, but I wanted to go over with them. I went over a lot more details of what the plan is and the alternatives to it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to cover that here, but I am going to give some backdrop information in what I see as what I believe are environmental justice concerns. So with the project, could you go to the next slide, please? So in this presentation, I'm going to just very quickly touch on what is environmental justice. None of this is comprehensive. This is very much summary after summary. But I want to go over what's environmental justice. I want to talk a little bit about Brookwood community and some of let's just move on. I'll get to it. I'll get to the other slide. So what is environmental justice? Next slide, please. A lot of different definitions I could lean on. So let me just stick with the very radical definition. I'm just kidding. This is actually a statement from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Assistant Secretary of the Army, so the guy in charge of civil works with the Army Corps of Engineers, has provided a definition of environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, regarding the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies, with no group bearing a disproportionate burden of environmental harms and risk. So this guy is high up on the chain, including he is one of the top decision makers in what flood control program the city of Jackson is going to adopt within the next year. Next slide, please. So first, I want to make sure that we have an idea of where the Brookwood community is in relationship to what's called the locally preferred plan, the One Lake. I'm also going to talk about a neighboring community, and these communities are going to come up several times throughout the presentation. So next slide, please. Where are we? Where are you? Right here, I've highlighted the three neighborhoods of interest: Canton Club, Colonial Heights, McLeod. We are somewhere around here. There's a larger map, very similar on two of the walls. I'm going to try to highlight the three neighborhoods in all of the slides, just to keep us, just so that we always kind of know where we are in relationship to everything else. So demographics, here is census block data. Specifically, this is the Black communities of the Jackson Metro, and more specifically, the percent of Black or African-American residents per census block. I want to highlight here that three neighborhoods are predominantly Black neighborhoods, between 60 to 100% Black residents. Next slide, please. This slide shows income distribution, same census blocks. This, on the other hand, shows per capita income. So the three neighborhoods, Brookwood community, the per capita income, we're looking from 20K to 60K. All right, next slide, please. And what I want to show with these two first slides are that the Brookwood community is a predominantly Black and middle-class community. And I really think that's important to highlight, because I think that there's some misconception that environmental issues, whether it's polluting or flooding, only affect poor neighborhoods. And that is not the case. These are not poor neighborhoods that you live in. These are middle-class neighborhoods. And yet, for many years, I don't think that you have had really any say in the One Lake project, and this project that's been pushed for over 20-something years in one way or another. So that's really what I wanted to emphasize with these two maps, is the demographics of the region and the income of the region. And I also want to emphasize a neighbor, because this neighbor is going to come up. So if you go downstream, you see right here, this predominantly white area from 0 to 20% white. This is Eastover. Many of you might be familiar with the name. It's one of the wealthiest communities within the city of Jackson. And it's easy to spot on the maps because it's characterized by this lake At the end, it's called Meadowbrook Lake, and it's going to come up in some of the following slides. And so it's always a good way to visualize it. Oh, that's Meadowbrook Lake. It is predominantly white and high income, somewhere between, on average 80 to 130 K per year. Next slide, please. So you already know this, so I'm not going to spend much time on this. You are susceptible to flooding. This community is susceptible to flooding. Next slide, please. And here's just a quote from the One Lakes 2018 feasibility study. It's just very much matter of fact. The Northeast Jackson area currently faces the highest risk of realizing economic damages from flooding. Next slide, please. And here is, here's one slide, the one slide on the flooding that I'll include here. This is a map which shows the neighborhoods and the area flooded in 1979. That's the highest flood the region's had on recorded history. You see North Canton, well, Canton Club, nearly fully flooded. Colonial Heights, nearly fully flooded. McLeod, nearly fully flooded. With the exception of maybe the school, just about that whole neighborhood was flooded. Next slide, please. So the question is, why are you susceptible to flooding? And there are multiple reasons, and they're going to all tie into the final comment that I said I turned in. So next slide, please. Here is a quote from 1973 U.S. Army Corps of Engineers report. In the northern section of the city, Jackson, portion of several subdivisions infringe upon floodplain lands. There was a guy in here who, unfortunately, he's left, but he lives in Canton Club, and we were looking at the maps, and he actually knows a lot of the history. Apparently, there's parts of the neighborhoods that weren't even, there was a big argument about whether it should be built. I'd love to learn more. I wish he was still here because he just knew a lot of history. But let me show you some history in the form of maps. There are the three neighborhoods overlaid in a 1905 USGS topographical map. The blue represents wetlands, swamps. It's most notable in Canton Club, but that part on the, the River Road subdivision is built directly on this blue, wetlands or swamp. Yes. Next slide, please. This is not, so I couldn't find a way to actually have this geo reference, but I can kind of point. This is pre-1979, before the reservoir was even complete. The three neighborhoods are located around here. This is a massive flood that prompted the construction of our current levee systems, which are downstream of us. But this area was also flooded in 1961, just within maybe a decade of the construction of a lot of these neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So part number one, why is the area susceptible to flooding? It was developed in a floodplain, a region that was already flooded before things were constructed. Next slide, please. But there's more. So when I met with several folks from Canton Club, they were aware. They've been told that the neighborhood was built where it shouldn't have been built, so to speak. But there's something I don't like about that type of, that idea puts the responsibility on the community and says, well, you shouldn't be there, and the story. So I want to continue. There's more. All right, so let's go to February. Oh, wait, go back, please. So February 2020 flood, many of you were here, if not all of you already living here. And the National Weather Service put out, I don't think you could call it a report, but they have what they call a story map online. And they make a note that I think is very important. Downstream of Lakeland, so this is Lakeland Drive right here. Downstream of Lakeland, flooding was not as bad as they anticipated. Upstream of Lakeland, so everything above here was worse than they. Now, the report goes on to state several reasons why this may be the case. And so I'm not a hydrologist, and I'm not going to, completely weigh in on any of them. But I think it's important to note that what we observed in 2020 was predicted nearly 40 years ago. Next slide, please. Clear and Ledger, 1986. Experts warned that the development along Lakeland could worsen floods in North Jackson. So just, I will go ahead and first few paragraphs just simply state that whenever you build stuff in a floodplain, take away the land that was once going to soak up water, store water. And so back then, Larry Larson, executive director of the Association of State Floodplain Managers, said that the encroachment of the floodplain pinches the area, so water to pass has to build a higher head. So it has to get higher immediately upstream to push the water through. So in other words, because everything was built on Lakeland, the water has to go through a very narrow spot, and so it has to build up higher, and it has to build up around here, north of Lakeland. So by allowing the rising and bending to one segment of development, they're ignoring the fact that there's another group of people being damaged by it being the development. And that those people are now going to be subject to increased flood elevations. This is around a time, I was not born yet, but the newspapers indicate that there was just a lot of arguments about floodplain development. Jackson's mayor was not happy with Flowood's mayor because they were letting this happen. And that it's my impression that a lot of that fight has dissipated. There's just no longer a concern about floodplain development. That's not the only place that might be a problem. Next slide. I'm going back to a similar map of a predictive map of how Jackson would look like under whenever the Pearl River is flooded at 36 feet. And I want to take it back to that neighborhood, Meadowbrook Lake, right here. Notice that this is all blue. Actually, Tracy, could you go back 2 slides? Because I think this one's kind of hard to see. So notice that there's this section that seems to be carved out. That's Meadowbrook Lake. That's that subdivision of Eastover that I mentioned earlier. Notice that it's not expected to flood at this time. Could you go back 2 slides? What I want to show you is that region is in what FEMA has defined as a floodway. It's an area that you're just not supposed to build on because it's highly sensitive to whenever you construct there, it's going to force water higher behind it. Next slide, please. Residents as early as 1990 were concerned that lake, well, it didn't exist back, the lake didn't exist, but that property, there were plans to develop it back then. Residents were very concerned about that development because they were concerned that it was going to push the water back. Here, Northeast Jackson residents say the city's resolve to limit risky development in the Pearl River floodplain is facing one of its biggest tests. And eventually the city failed and they let the construction happen. Next slide, please. So why is Brookwood susceptible to flooding? It's because the metro's floodplain is just mismanaged. Yes, sure, this neighborhoods maybe should have been here, but the problem's only worsened because we're letting a lot of neighborhoods appear where they shouldn't be, and it's just making it worse everywhere. And you guys are caught between that and the reservoir, which I don't even talk about the reservoir here, but that's a whole nother topic. Next slide, very important. So, like I said, I have to skip a lot, but over since the 1996, certain interest in Jackson, a lot of the business community has pushed the idea of creating a lake for flood control. So let's look into that real quick. Next slide, please. The Corps of Engineers has examined the proposal of building a lake. And I'll just start with commentary from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It is unclear how the construction of the dam and the impoundment of water reduce flood risk to adjacent communities. The existence of a 1,500-acre lake does not create any additional flood storage capacity or conveyance capacity. Conveyance capacity just means the ability to move water through, right? If you can increase conveyance capacity, the floods won't get as high. So the Corps of Engineers has questioned the idea of a lake. Nonetheless, I do want to note that the project, not the lake, but the project will lower flood peaks. And I want to really very quickly explain how. The idea of the lake, so here we are again, Brookwood community. The idea of the lake is to dig out a massive area around the river, starting just north of Lakeland and going south of I-20. And then they're going to take all that dredged, excavated material, and they're going to lift land around the river. That would create the new Riverside property that a lot of people are very excited about. And so this cross section comes from the feasibility study. You know, the river looks something like this if you look at it to the side, and their idea is just to make it larger. I've heard it being described as widening the river. That's how several folks have described it. And when you do that, that part does make the river move faster, which again, then helps keep flood peaks from going as high. Again, the lake doesn't do that, just digging up the river like this. So next slide, please. So what my comment for Healthy Gulf is really focused on is looking how those flood reduction benefits, if the peaks are going to be lowered, where are they going to be lowered? Next slide, please. Yes, sir. Go back. So I
So sprinkler, I'm not part of the planning process on this. But I think I'm touching what your question was for exactly. And yes, stay here. So let me go back over the plan. I missed one second, one part. So I know that we're going. Yeah. Right, so that's
widening the river. They're going to take that spoil, that dirt, and they're going to put on a purple. That by itself is going to, you know, it's my understanding that that by itself is going to reduce the floods. But then to make a lake, here's the section that I missed. They're going to construct a new dam right here, like next to Richland, Rankin County. And then that's going to fill up the region that they just excavated. Does that answer your question? I don't.
At the
Mhm.
end, we're talking about where they're gonna build the dam, but they're never really gonna build another lake. Like it's called one lake,
Oh,
so you're
yeah.
thinking at the end of this widening, there may be a pool or a lake.
yes, the dam, yeah, the dam's going to stop up the water, and all that blue region that was dug out is going to fill up with water.
Okay. But it-
Gonna go somewhere.
Well, I don't, yeah, I don't want to go too deep into like the hydrology because I think maybe your statement is about it backing up into creeks and things like that, and that's a whole nother issue
That's
too.
one thing that they don't take into consideration, Abby, correct me if I'm wrong. They are not taking into consideration the tributary and the creeks in the One Lake Plain.
Study that came out in 2018 did not take into account the tributaries. The Corps of Engineers has said that they are willing to look at the basin as a whole and look at the tributaries. So that would be something the community could write to the Corps of Engineers and say, hey, Purple Creek, overflows into my backyard. Maybe I'll use it.
Wasn't there at one time, the plan where the tributaries would fill up, but they would never overflow because of what was gonna be downstream?
I mean, I think,
In other words, if you lived on like a creek and it filled up, you could almost put a boat in your backyard now
Mhm.
because it would be more
I-
or less a stationary amount of water.
I think that's very similar to the idea of the lake itself. There's a big question that people ask, like, wait a second, if you're filling up this area with water, if it becomes a lake, how is that actually going to help with flood control if there's more water next to you? The idea is that they've widened the river so much that even though it's high, it's on average higher, whenever there's a big storm, it won't rise as much. So that's the pitch, so to speak, of the project. The water should be higher at all times, but it shouldn't be as high during storm events, or it shouldn't rise as much, right? So right now our river goes right, on summer, it can get down to like 4 feet. And then, like 2020, it went, up to 36. So it can go from 4 to 36 feet very easily, even higher. And, 79, it went to 40 something. What they're pitching is that the river is going to stay permanently around 20 something feet, but won't rise more than 30 something feet. because of the lake. Yes?
I just thought that analysis, but that they said that they sort of generically said they expect margin of a lot of creeks downstream to vary. So it's kind of a disguised way of saying there is going to be more flooding on some of these other creeks.
Yeah. No, I can't speak to that. I know that that one of another comment that I'm not going to talk about here that I submitted for Healthy Gulf was that there needs to be a further investigation into creek flooding, because data from Lynch Creek, so West Jackson, they're flooding when the river is as low as like 15 feet. So what happens if you've permanently raised it to 20? Like, will it exacerbate it? But I do want to get to what I want to note here is let's give it the benefit of a doubt, right? Because again, the important thing is that it's supposed to reduce flood peaks. So floods are not supposed to be as high. So could you go two slides to the ahead, please? Yes, sir.
This one lake project, is it gonna have spillway? It's gonna regulate the level of the lake like the reservoir does?
It's-
At a certain level that's accepted?
It's not going to have a spillway. It's going to be a weir. So the whole thing is going to be a spillway at the bottom. There is going to be what they call a low flow gate. So if the water gets so low that the cities or the region is not meeting its minimum water flow, they can open that and let more water downstream. But let me get to that because you know, I am spending a lot of time. So one quick thing is I met with Canton Club a while back to talk about the plan, and I think that there's still a need for that. So that's something that we can talk about is like going over. I can connect people to a lot of the resources, the documentation on this, because that's what a lot of what I'm showing you is sourced from things like the 2018 DEIS. So here is a table that they've provided in the 2018 study. It shows you along the river how much a 100-year flood is supposed to drop. So for example, they say, you know, here are 3 neighborhoods. 297 is near one of them. They say that a 100-year flood is supposed to be 3.5 feet lower if there's a 100-year flood, the river around here should be 3.5 feet lower. That's what I was trying to get to. I find this very difficult to, you know, like you have to cross-reference a lot. So one thing that I did to help visualize this, next slide, please. I took the data and I split it into groups, so to speak. Like there's going to be a group that's getting the largest drop. There's going to be a group that's getting the lowest drop, and then there's going to be some intermediary groups, right? I've ranked the level of flood reduction benefits. Next slide, please. And then I took that and I mapped it with the demographic data of the region to visualize who's getting the benefits. So here's back again the racial, the percent Black or African American. What I wanted to point out is that here again we are. So it's a little hard for me to tell on this TV, but the top benefits are centered mostly around Eastover and Lakeland Drive. So they're getting on a 100-year flood, they're looking at something from 5 to 8 feet of flood reduction. Brookwood community it looks mostly a little bit through Hanging Moss Creek at the tail end of the second order benefits. So somewhere between 3 to 5, but something like Canton Club, we're looking at something a little closer to about 2.5 feet of a drop. Now that's a 100-year flood. 2020 was something like a 25-year flood. Some folks had about what, like I think up to 6 feet of water in their house. So this wouldn't even help that. I guarantee you wouldn't help with the other one. And I'll just quote the actual study in a second. Next slide, please. Here's the same metric, but put against income. Once again, where's the peak benefits? It's around Eastover, Lakeland Drive. On this one, it's just kind of sad how like the peak benefits are for the highest earning region in our city. Yeah. Next slide, please. So I told you I would just cite a little section right here from the study. The river. So this is the actual 2018 study, Appendix E. page 16, if anyone wants to follow along at home. The River Road subdivision is predominantly minority residential subdivision, 73% African-American, according to the 2010 census. 48 homes, so on, so on, so on, so on. With the construction of this alternative, i.e. the One Lake, all homes in the community are expected to continue to experience flooding during a significant flood event similar to the 1979 flood. Yes, or 1% chance flood, 100-year flood, so even a flood that's slightly lower. But even then, this community is expected to experience significant reductions, so on, so on, so on. But here we go. So during an annual 4% chance exceedance event, so that's like what happened in 2020, they say that 23 structures will experience flooding with construction as alternative. So about half the homes will flood on a 2020 like scenario. And then it goes on to talk about Colonial Heights, very similar, that there's going to be a reduction, but they'll continue to flood. And one thing that I first started talking to folks in Brookwood community is that in all of the in this study, multiple times it just says voluntary buyouts will be proposed for this area. I found it very insulting that people who have been pushing for this project actually went to folks in the Canton Club community, asked them to speak on behalf of the project, but they were never told that their own neighborhoods, the best they could do is have a buyout. I don't think that there's anything wrong with buyouts. Sometimes it's the best way to go. And I wish the engineer from earlier was still here. We talked about that. But this isn't being sold as like a, hey, everyone, like you're going to be bought out. Like that's the best we can do for you.
I've never even heard that.
Yeah.
And I'm
Well-
thinking, I thought a long time ago that what they should do to eliminate all this stress that these people go through.
Yeah. So my concern with buyouts is that the people being bought out are going to get the short end of the stick. This project, one of the reasons why it's the locally preferred project, again, that's a legal term, is because that new lakeshore property is supposed to, the estimate, it's supposed to go up in land value by like $55 million over a certain amount of years. So people are making money off of this. If there was really to be a fair buyout, it better compensate for that. But
The One Lake, in my opinion, the One Lake plan is the new urban renewal.
so I have gone a lot, and really my main comment is just questions for the core to examine. So a simple one is are there projects or there alternatives that would better serve these predominantly Black middle-class neighborhoods? And importantly, because we talked about how new development tends to back up water, well, if you lower the floodplain so much along Lakeland and Eastover, are you just going to spur further development that's going to actually cancel out any of the benefits? That's something that I think needs to be studied. So that's it, y'all. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I know I went off a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Ramona, for having me.
There you go. 2 mics.
Okay. Okay. Okay, can y'all hear me? Okay, so I'm Abby Brayman. I'm Executive Director of Pearl River Keeper, a local nonprofit. So I just wanted to let you all know that the Army Corps of Engineers plans to release their options for flood control. And one of them is going to be the One Lake, and there'll be several other options. They plan to release that September 1st is their plan right now. Okay, so at that point, they will most likely be having some public meetings again, and they will also be taking public comment. So my website is just www.pearlriverkeeper.com. You can go there, you can follow me on social media. We will be posting as much information as we can. We'll be reading through the whole study. It'll probably be 1,000 pages. And we'd like to be able to inform the community of what is happening and what their plans are. And also we'd like to help you all submit your own public comments so the Corps can know, this is where I live, this is how much it floods, this is what flood insurance costs me, or I can't get in flood insurance, or this is, I have to move all my stuff out of my home and then move back in, things like that, so that the Corps is aware that Northeast Jackson, if y'all are offering buyouts, then what is it? Come talk to us. And so we want to be able to be your interface with the Corps of Engineers on that. So just wanted to put that out there, and thank you all so much for coming to this meeting.
I don't know if this is gonna help us, but when you talk about buyouts, I researched some of the other states that have these same issues, and they bought the people's houses that flooded continuously. They gave them the value of the houses that were like the value of your home now as it should be, and then they added to that for all the loss that the people have gone through. And I have that article somewhere, I can send it to you, but I don't know how they would implement that here, but they compensated people where they weren't at a loss. That's what I think would be nice to happen to all of these people, myself included, who have been going through this for 25 years.
And buyout, in the case of a buyout, right?
And this was only if, you know, you were in this certain area and it was a particular name for the grant or whatever program that they had, that they bought the people out.
But you bought your house for 25, 30 years ago. And we're right at that 40-year point now where folks are retiring out, they're aging out, they want to age in place. So let me give you an example. My parents were in their early 50s when urban renewal came to our community. My parents are a part of the Great Migration. They migrated to New Orleans, Illinois. And 6 months after they, what they called back then, burnt the mortgage, urban renewal came to our community. And they did a buyout. So here my parents were, their children are up and moving out now. And they should be, they were ready to start preparing for retirement. But guess what they had to do? They had to go into another 30-year mortgage. My mother never recovered from that. And she died prematurely.
But if these same people remain in place, they'll be going through the same stress-related move out, move in, be flooded situations, so.
Okay.
I mean, it
First,
can't be
the
old.
people that gonna buy out, what they gonna do, they're not gonna stop flooding. If you buy my house, well, I'm in a flood. Okay, the person that buying out, what they gonna do with the land?
Oh, okay, hold right there. So you mean, you saying they're gonna buy you out and they're gonna fix the flood after they buy you out?
That's what I'm.
Okay, they're gonna continue to let it flood,
Yes.
but you're gonna be gone.
Correct.
But the water don't supposed to be going down the neighborhood. No way like that.
It's always
If it
been
be,
a wetland. It should have
It's
never
just-
been built on.
well, that's why I said.
That in this One Lake plan, has the Army Corps of Engineers factored in the impacts of climate change,
So,
right? These
Is this a profit for the buyout? Are they trying to help the community? Are they
But I ain't trying to-
solve the problem at all? Or can you wait now so the water?
We're gonna have to cut it off because we gotta move out, we gotta come out of the building, but we need to have I think we need to have more conversations. Of course, that's up to community, right? But can we, first of all, was this helpful?
Yes. Very much so.
Okay, okay.
Especially in
Yeah, so do we want to have more conversations around these issues? How we can better communicate within our community? How we can identify issues that community would like to solve? Because MCUP is all about solutions, right? We have to solve our problem. We can't talk about it. If we have a political problem, if we have a alderman or whatever, that it's not adequately representing the needs of our community, then we have to solve those things, but we got to have some communication. So do we agree as a community that we would like to continue these conversations?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. As a community, would you like to see more experts come in to better inform and to educate us about these issues? Because we're not engineers, we're not physicists. Juan is a physicist, right? He's a hydraulic physicist. What is it, Brian? So he knows how this stuff works. I know you didn't, but that's what I'm saying. Because those are the resources that we need. We understand our weaknesses, right? And so we know that we need to have more the expertise that we need in order to be able to defend ourselves against the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers is not necessarily our friend, right? And who is pushing the One Lake plan? Developers are pushing this One Lake plan. And we know developers are all about one thing, money.
I think our government officials doing it as well, even our city council and all these people that we have to deal with.
Well, y'all know elections are coming up. Y'all know we got to do a whole lot of. That's right. So I'm just, we're a bipartisan organization. We can't go there, but elections are coming up. And if that thing with that garbage if that wasn't enough for us to make some changes, I don't know what is. So are there any further questions? Next steps? Like to talk a little bit more about that. Hopefully there will be conversations going on in your respective neighborhood associations about the broader communications plan and everything, and how we'll be able to come together and looking at maybe in time is moving, Army Corps of Engineers, Abby, they're going to be announcing in what, September? Do we think we need to have a meeting prior to then? We also need to do the comment period. It's very, very important that we write and we do the comment period. I hope everyone signed in. I hope we have everyone's email address, because that way we'll be able to keep the information flowing when meetings are going to be, when critical dates are, because we have to be ready. They move quickly. And when we have to be ready, we can't wait until like they did when they called this meeting. They gave community 3 days, 4 days notice, right? So we have to be prepared. I want to thank you so much for inviting us, for allowing us to come into the community. Juan, you had something you wanted to say?
Quick statement about participating with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Canton Club Neighborhood Association submitted a public comment
Good.
requesting that the Corps of Engineers meet with them.
Yes.
directly, and there might be use in having people, even in here, signing on to a letter, even though the public comment is done, just to say, hey, we understand this comment went through. We want to re-stress that we want these meetings, you and us, not, like you coming to us.
And we can invite them to, and believe me, they have to come, right? So maybe at our next meeting, we can invite the Army Corps of
Well,
Engineers.
they stated that anytime we wanted them to attend, that they would.
Okay, so should we have them at our next meeting? Our next joint meeting of all 3 of the neighborhoods?
Think so?
Do we have a date for the next meeting?
No, sir, we need to set a date.
Okay, so right now. If y'all got a plan to fix Brookwood, now we need to talk about it some more, this is already a process. Work with it,
For the communications plan?
this is the plan and Brookwood. Y'all already got a plan for it?
No, sir, that is something that we need to look at. Berkeley University, Jackson State, JSU and Berkeley University, they did an exchange of students. And the students, they did come up with an alternative plan. It wasn't really an alternative plan, but the plan, what they did was they looked at the creeks and the tributaries. And I think that what their research is what prompted the Army Corps of Engineers to say that they would consider looking at the creeks. So I think that's something that we have to do as community, is come together, bring our own engineers in, bring our own resources, and we can do this to develop an alternative plan, not a developer's plan, but a plan that is going to best serve the interests of the people and the community at whole. That's where we could need to go.
Can I make a suggestion about
Absolutely.
Brookwood community neighborhood thing that was sent out by Tracy? Can they post a picture of this map?
Yeah.
Next door and say, this is what we're now calling the Brookwood community, because no one knows what it is.
Well, is that what community want to do? Do you want to continue to hold it as or resurrect the Brookwood?
Hold it.
Do you want to be identified as the Brookwood community?
I never heard of it.
So do we need to vote on it?
Or, I mean, as opposed to what?
Just change to something.
Yeah, something where the people in Northeast Jackson
They already have-
recognize
You
it.
said one south and one over this way, so we can change to another name.
See, there is one in South Jackson.
Okay, so how many, do we have representatives from all three of the neighborhood associations here?
Our president is not here. She asked me to come in her place tonight, but here's the thing, Mr. Ramon, just as you stated earlier, it's this communication piece with these three neighborhoods. We need to, but I never said, and I know she didn't understand that anything about Brookwood, because I don't know Brookwood. I live in Candy Club.
Mhm.
Me too.
I can tell you about,
Right.
about that, because we flooded up there, and I mean, all three of the neighborhoods. but-
And that's why we need that communication so that we can all know what's going on
And those-
in,
those three
right, because it's impacting the whole area.
I think the names.
Yes, Lee.
Yeah.
It's no one knows what that is.
Right. And for
Okay,
those three presidents, and as we said earlier, I mean, texts and emails and all that is good, but, tonight, here, with, Ms. Tracy and everybody else, if they'd have been here, it would have been fine, then you could speak with them, and then they could kind of go from there, they could send the information out to us, as Ms. Moore was doing, but she informed me last week that she wouldn't be here, and asked me if I would come in her stead, which I was gonna be here anyway, because I might, third thing, in first and foremost, and
so maybe we can do a naming.
Call
Or
it the flood area.
the-
for all I
okay.
care.
So if we take Brookwood community, if we take Brookwood off, right,
Northeast flood area, I mean,
Northeast Association.
northeast,
it's northeast something, that's.
So
Not understanding where it is, because everybody knows there's a Brookwood in South Jackson.
So when they have meetings, where do they meet and who is their president?
Who?
Brookwood.
It has nothing to do with
no,
this. There's a Brookwood Country Club in South Jackson, and there's.
No, I'm talking about this neighborhood here that's below us that floods. So where, I mean, is anybody in Brookwood?
I don't think no one is,
Identify differently.
right.
So that everybody here knows that's what they're.
So if we have,
talking
the
About our subdivision.
if we just have them, take off the Brookwood and then just use the Canton Club, Columbia Heights, McLeod Community.
That's fine.
And just leave it at that for now. Until community has the opportunity to come up with a name that you want to identify with the broader community. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Pugh.
Because if you do that, I live around older people, they're not gonna understand. They're gonna say, oh, that's from a class. Because I'm getting you from the one lane. Oh, that's for downtown.
Yes. Okay.
You know,
That's why not a lot of people are here tonight, because they didn't know what. that
They
meant.
didn't know what that meant. Okay, okay.
announce more.
And post that picture of the three subdivisions.
Of the three
And you can
communities.
name the subdivisions, but I would say make it definitely northeast Jackson flood residents or residents of flood areas
Or
something.
maybe Northeast Jackson citizens for flooding, or so we'll come up with names,
But I think
okay?
the flood should be in there.
The flooding
somewhere.
should
That's what
definitely be in
draws
there.
your
Okay.
attention to what this is all about.
Okay, okay, so we would definitely work on that.
That's
And
what
we
I'm
would
just
definitely
saying.
take off Brookwood,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
we'll figure out what it's,
That's my.
how we was gonna, everybody agree? Okay. Okay, so I don't think we have any more. I do apologize for the technical challenges that we had going over your time. I appreciate you for coming. Thank you all so much. And can we have someone to close us out with prayer, please?
Heavenly Father God, we thank you for this occasion tonight. We thank you for the food, the fellowship, for the info that was given, and we pray, Father, for wisdom and for instruction for future endeavors with dealing with this situation. We know that if we put it in your hands and leave it there, you're gonna give us and you're gonna lead us, guide us, and direct us in the right direction. And for this, we give you the praise, the glory, and all the honor in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Good night. Thank you. Be safe going home.
I'm sick too long.
I know.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
coming. Yes, sir.
I got some information out of it. Took
Good.
a little while to get rolling. but
Did it?
it's
Good.
all- It's all good.
And what shows there, you can't close this thing. Are you can't close this thing?
Oh, please do. And we do have some of the printed, if anyone wants a printed copy of the communications plan we have.
Put your hands on my shoulders.
Huh?
Put your hands on my shoulders. Now, a little easier, right?
Yeah.
All right, you pass it.
Okay.
Okay. Order me some AA battery just in case.
And I have plenty of them.